In this video, I'm going to show you how to create custom messages very quickly in Google Sheets that include different values from tables that you've created. So in this example, we're looking at a class, and this teacher is trying to give custom messages back to their students that include their name, the quiz grade, and whether or not they were above or below the average, and then also the class average. So the message that I would like to send to all these students would be hello, whatever their name is, and then your score on our most recent quiz was whatever their score is. This score is above or below, depending on where they were at, the class average of, and then this class average. So we're going to go in. There's a few concepts that you're going to have to learn, but the biggest one is how to reference cells within a string, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the video. So let's go ahead and get started by first taking a look at one of these messages. So the idea would be that I would just have to type this in one time using these specific cell references that I'm going to go over. And then if you click on your blue copy square and you drag it down, it would then copy that message, adding the different values in the different rows. And so then I could quickly, either copy and paste these onto a comment, or I could put them in an email and send them to the students. So let's talk about how we did this. So the first thing would be to make sure that all of your data is organized in clean and in rows and columns, and that it's all set before you can do this. So there were a few things that I needed to do. The first was actually to calculate the average, so I just used a formula for that. And then I needed to also use a formula to figure out whether or not each of these quiz grades was above or below the average. So I just used a simple if statement. In this if statement, I used a relative reference and an absolute reference to compare the quiz grade to the class average, and then based on whether or not it was above or below, so greater than or less than that class average, it returns the above or below value. So we've got all of our data. We have it stored in the rows and columns that we need. So the next step is actually creating the message. So because we are going to be doing references, just like when we're using any formula, we need to start with the equal sign. So we'll start with the equal sign. And then we are actually creating a string. So we need to note that this is text that we're entering in. This is not some function that we're trying to create. So we'll start with quotes. And then the message that we wanted to say was first, hello. So we need to type that word in because that's going to be in every single one of these messages. So hello. And then we're not going to type in Mia because we want that to change based on which person we're referring to. So if we're referring to this, the third row with Isabella, we don't want it to say hello Mia. So we need to change, and we need to make this a reference here. Now this is going to be a relative reference because we're going to be changing the cell as we go down. So in this case here, I would say hello, and then the syntax for referring to a cell within a string, you start with a quote, then you do the ampersand sign, and then it's the cell that you're referencing. So in this case, it would be A2, then another ampersand, another quote, and now we've got that reference. So if I press enter right now, it'll just say hello Mia. And if I copy this down, it would say hello, whatever the other names are. So obviously we're not finished yet. We need to get on to the rest of the message, but hopefully that gives you an idea of how the referencing works, and specifically in this case, a relative reference within a string. So let's go ahead and continue on with this message. Hello, and then we're going to do a comma. And then now we have to enter in the next part. So the next part is your grade on the most recent quiz was A. And now we need to refer to this quiz grade. So again, it's going to be changing every single time. So this is going to be a relative reference. And the way that we can to start this out in a string is with our quote, then the ampersand sign, and now we're going to be referring to B2. That will give us the quiz grade. And then another ampersand and a quiz, or a quotation mark there. All right, so now we have hello, whatever their name is. Your grade on the most recent quiz was A. That's the grade. Now, we're finished with that first sentence, so we can put a period there. And then we'll start the next sentence. So the next sentence is, this score was, and then we need to say whether or not it was above or below. And that's going to depend on the value that's in this C cell. So again, that's going to be changing as we go down. So we're doing another relative reference, quote, ampersand, C2, ampersand, and then quote. So we now know it's going to say this score was above or below the class average of, and then we need to refer to this class average. Now, this class average is going to stay the same no matter what. And the only way it would change is if we change some quiz grades in here. But if we were going to use this same spreadsheet for every single quiz, then we would want to make this so that this class average could change. We don't want to just type in 75.6. We want to do an absolute reference to this cell. So the absolute reference is very similar to the relative reference. The only difference is that we have to include a money sign before and after the letter of the column that we're referring to. So in this case here, it would be quote, ampersand, and then we need to do a money sign, and then it's this cell in this bottom corner, which is B13. So B, and then another money sign, and then 13, and then another ampersand, and a finished quote. So this is the same as a reference up here. The only difference between this absolute reference and our relative references is these money signs. And again, the reason that we needed that is that we're referring to this B13 for every single one of these as we go down. We don't want to change this 75.6 as we go from Mia to Isabella to Mila, because everybody in this class was a part of that class average. So that's not going to change based on the different names. Okay, so that is the last reference that we need there. And then we'll just put a period at the end on the outside and finish it with a quote. So this starts with a quote, and the string ends with a quote. The only quotation marks on the insides are just to denote that we're referencing cells in between. Okay, so remember, you need to start with a quote, end with a quote, and then anytime you're doing a reference, it's quote, ampersand, the cell, ampersand, and then another quote. If it's an absolute reference, you gotta have those money signs in there. So when we press enter, we should see that our message pops up. Hello, Mia. Your grade on the most recent quiz was a 62. This score was below the class average of a 75.6. And now, because I did this using formulas and references, I can just copy this down. And you'll see that all of my custom messages come up. So, for our row that has Max's values, Max scored a 47. That's obviously below the average. So, hello, Max. Your grade on this most recent quiz was a 47. The score was below the class average of 75.6. All right, hopefully this video helped you out. Good luck with Google Sheets.